Story 1. When I was maybe 5 or 6, I had recurring dreams that if I ran downhill against the wind fast enough and jumped, I could fly. They were extremely realistic. It was also very frequent, to the point where I began to doubt their status as dreams. One day, I noticed the wind was blowing up the hill we live atop. I decided to try it. I sprinted full speed down this hill and leapt as hard as I could, and promptly smashed my face against the sidewalk. Story 2. I waited behind my sister's bedroom door to scare her. She closed the door, still didn't see me, so I crept up behind her and did something like, "Buwajity, buwajity, buwajity." She turned around and basically punched me like Bill Murray punched Ned in Groundhog Day. Black eye and everything. I don't try to scare her anymore. Story 3. Tried to impress my young daughters by doing a backflip on the trampoline. Folded myself accordion style, sprained my back, and could barely walk or move for about a week. Act your age, gentlemen. Story 4. I tripped on my cat, ripped my pants, face planted into a glass door, and managed to then fall on my butt again while trying to stand back up, nearly squishing my cat. Got back up and decided that was enough walking for one day and went to my room to change. Story 5. I was standing on a ladder cleaning the gutters right in front of the kitchen window, and I was talking to my wife through the open window about whatever. The house phone rang and I said, "I'll get it," and walked off the ladder midair and went straight down one floor into a window well where I broke my ankle. Story 6. When my brother was a kid, he had this cool dagger, and he was in his room fighting invisible ninjas, as one does. He went to stab one that was sneaking up behind him through his legs and stabbed himself in the calf. He was scared to tell anyone and just kept putting bandages on it until it healed. He's got this really wide scar there, and he gets all wiggly if you touch it. Mine was when I tried to make a zip line out of an industrial power cord and a wire coat hanger from the second floor of a barn. I knocked myself out, and my brother thought I died. Story 7. I once tried to impress my friends by jumping over a low fence. My foot got caught, and I went flying face first into the ground. I ended up with a sprained wrist and a bruised ego. Story 8. Trying to open a huge clam on a riverbed. Came unsettlingly close to severing 3 fingers off. Luckily, just a few broken fingers and stitches to close them up. Story 9. Took an edible. About an hour later, I was putting together a treadmill that I got free from Facebook Marketplace a few days before. As I was working on loosening a screw with an Allen wrench, I put a little more torque than I normally would have on the wrench. My hand slipped and I gave myself an uppercut right to the jaw. Chipped a few teeth and was pretty sure I gave myself temporomandibular joint disorder. Story 10. Reaching past a hot exhaust to fix part of my car engine. That wasn't the dumb bit. The dumb bit was doing exactly the same thing 5 seconds later, giving me 2 burns on my forearm in almost the same place. Story 11. Choose one. Sawed myself into my hand while gardening. Needed a few stitches. Cut myself all the way to the bone on 2 fingers with my first pocket knife. That's when I found out it's actually sharp. Broke my jaw when climbing at home and falling. I'll leave it to the audience to find out how I landed. Climbed a 4 to 5 meter high tree just to discover at the top that it's very dead. I discovered it because the branch I was standing on broke. Luckily, my chest hit every single branch on my way down, so I just had some pretty impressive bruises. Tried to open a nut with a ratchet and a 1 meter steel tube while leaning on it with my whole weight. Eventually, the nut gave in, and my finger got clamped between the steel tube and the ground. It popped open like a party popper, spraying my coworker who was standing about a meter away in blood. One time I had to get some stitches on my head because of some stupid stuff at the pool. Came home, but went directly to the football field, soccer. About an hour later I was in the intensive care unit again. Who would have thought that stitches rip open when you take a ball to the head? Certainly not me. I could go on, but I feel like that's enough for a first round. Story 12. I noticed a hairline fracture in a ceramic food bowl I was holding. I wonder if I applied pressure, would it break? It did. 5 stitches to close my thumb back up. Story 13. Got bumped into while working as a breakfast cook and put my hand out in front of me to steady myself. I put my palm down completely flat, right on the heated flat-top grill. 0 out of 10, do not recommend. Story 14. I got a nasty paper cut on my finger last night while reading care instructions for the surgery I had last week. The paper cut hurts more than the surgery. Story 15. Picture yourself driving down a logging trail north of Sudbury in an open Jeep. The passenger notices a rope dangling down from a tree limb. Without much thought, the idea of playing Tarzan occurs to this individual, and he grasps the rope while the Jeep is still moving along. The lift out of the Jeep was perfect. The long swing of the rope was exciting until the rope breaks at its farthest possible point and sends this individual crashing into some boulders. A broken forearm and being high on mushrooms and beer was the final reward. Circa 1981. This fool was me. 2-hour drive to Sudbury Hospital. Too stoned to be given medication, just a nice waterproof cast. 2 weeks before tobacco harvest. I still managed to prime tobacco for the harvest, but it hurt. Oh, to be 17 again. Story 16. So many ways it's impossible to choose just one. Probably the most painful was when I kicked what I thought was a pile of leaves with all my might. Those leaves were hiding a tree stump. The most dangerous was probably when I was barreling down a woodland trail on a mountain bike doing maybe 30 miles per hour, lost traction, slid down a hill, and slammed into a big tree. The tree was fine. The bike and I were not. I've electrocuted about an inch of my thumb with 240 volts alternating current. I've almost died twice in my life from several blood clots in both lungs and other places. Fell off a roof. Shot myself in the foot with a pellet gun. Hit my crotch on numerous occasions accidentally while doing other things. Tripped over my own feet way too many times. I could go on and on. Story 17. I had to call out of work because I strained both calf muscles at a wedding 2 days before, dancing to House of Pain Jump Around. It was 4 minutes of jumping. I had to explain this to my boss. He just laughed and said that has to be true. No one is making that one up. Story 18. I told my husband, sister, and brother-in-law to watch how fast I could go downstairs, and then intrusive thoughts won, and I basically threw myself down the concrete stairs at Boston Garden. I didn't break anything but bruised most of my body. Story 19. But planting down half a flight of marble stairs in Spain last September and probably breaking my left foot. Thankfully, I didn't fall headfirst. There was a small amount of water on the floor, and I didn't see it. I couldn't stand on only that foot, point my foot, go on releve, or do rocks. I could force my foot into a shoe if I used the floor. My entire foot tripled in size, turned bright purple, and my toes were bright red. I have a phenomenally rare disorder, so I didn't bother going to a doctor because I knew there was no point. Story 20. I probably have done dumber things, but currently, I've managed to badly pull a muscle in my neck and shoulder because I reached into the back seat of my car to grab a pack of tissues. I guess I have reached that age where my body just hates me. Story 21. When I was in elementary school, my friend and I turned the lights off in her basement and walked around the edge of the pool table, like a balance beam. I slipped and one leg went down. I cracked my vagina so hard on the edge of the table. I'll never forget the pain. Story 22. One time I tried opening a can of pineapple juice, and instead of opening it fully, I did it 3/4 and tried to pull the rest off with my hands. My pinky ended up sliding down the metal, and it got cut pretty badly. Never again. Story 23. I swam my face into the floor of the pool and broke my nose. For almost 20 years, I stuck to the story that I got kicked in the face by another child in the pool. Story 24. My then 4-year-old daughter and I were playing around, making silly faces and voices. We both laughed at the same time and leaned forward in laughter, which resulted in us accidentally headbutting each other. I ended up splitting my eyebrow open. Story 25. Walking in flip-flops near an empty pool, my flip-flop got caught, and I fell in and snapped my foot in half. The surgeon said I basically had a bag of bones in my foot. Could have been worse, but thank goodness I landed on my back and not my head. Story 26. I was trying to turn off the lights in my bedroom. The light switch was about 30 to 40 centimeters, just about 11 to 14 inches for US readers, off the right side of my bed, which had a low wall on that side. So the bed was against another wall on the left side, a low wall on the right with the light switch just over the low wall, right? I rolled over, and while trying to reach the switch, I managed to fall and get wedged in between the small void or crevasse between the wall and the bed. I was stuck for 2 hours and broke 4 ribs. And then there was a time I was just waking up, walked semi-drowsy with my arms up front, yawning, and I hit the door frame, causing my elbow to crush and break 2 ribs on my upper left side. A thing a fist or two above your heart. The small, more cartilaginous ones, like in the first injury down the ribcage, are painful but manageable. The big bony ones, it's the second worst kind of pain I have ever endured, and I had a week-long flu while that happened. Worst experience ever. Story 27. I got drunk, threw an empty bottle into a fire, stood up, fell over the fire, hit a shard of glass with my palm. 3 a.m. ambulance ride. Some stitching. The doctor was not happy. Eventually, they had to fix the tendon on my arm with surgery later on. 2 months sick leave. I am not proud of this story. Story 28. It's one that if I ever even mention the event to my wife, she laughs uncontrollably for 5 minutes. I bobbled a bar of soap in the shower, and as it was falling, I reflexively tried to catch it. In that motion, I overreached and punched myself in the groin. I doubled over and let out a pained groan, and as I doubled over, I farted very loudly. My wife laughed harder than I've ever seen another human laugh. The first words she got out after several minutes were, "I can't breathe." Story 29. Tripped while getting into my car, bashed my head on the frame, got a concussion. 2 years, almost to the day, later tried to flip my hair out of my face on some park equipment and hit the other side of my head on a metal pole. Cute little concussion. Story 30. When I was about 6, I was on the dive team at a local pool and couldn't quite nail my tuck dive. I wanted to practice more, but since we didn't have a pool at home, I thought it would be a great idea to practice by jumping from my bed and twisting to land on my feet after the tuck part. It was not a great idea. I broke my elbow. 20 years later, I finally told my mom that I didn't actually trip over the dog. Story 31. My birthday friend was ringing the doorbell. I wanted to slam the door to scare him. I punched through the glass window. I scared him. 5 stitches across my artery. Story 32. Got tripped by a girl in the boys' bathroom and hit my head on a urinal. 6 stitches. I was in grade 6. Didn't think she would chase me into the washroom. Story 33. Not me, but my sister. She was using an orange peeler and gashed open her hand between her thumb and pointer finger. I don't mean a scratch, I mean a deep cut with a mostly blunt orange peeler. She still gets teased about it to this day. Story 34. My dad's family used to have a tackle football game each Thanksgiving. When I was 5, I noticed no one could tackle my father, so I ran out on the field and gave it a shot. He didn't know I was coming and was running full speed. I broke my wrist in a few places. Story 35. I spent the better part of 10 minutes trying to swap the old dull knife blade for a new sharp knife blade, and then promptly cut the top of my finger off. Story 36. Hiking off trail, stoned as hell, I slipped and fell something nasty. Landed on my crotch, thought I blew a nut, but my hands caught them. I had 5 holes in my shin, and they were bleeding. Tied it up and hobbled a mile down the mountain. Should have gotten stitches, but I'm dumb. 10 years later, I still have the scars I notice every day on my leg. Story 37. I was working night shifts as a single mom, getting very little sleep. One day I was able to sleep but woke up to use the bathroom. I put my flip-flops on for some reason and stumbled into the bathroom. I had thick rugs in the bathroom that I would always get my flip-flops caught on. Well, this day was no different, except I wasn't awake enough to catch myself. I went flying and smacked my face on the sink. I still remember the crack my face made. I don't remember anything else, but I woke up in my bed, went to the bathroom, and there was blood everywhere and a wash rag where it looked like I tried to clean up some blood. I had a swollen face and 2 extremely black eyes. Took about 2 months for my face to start to go back to normal. I was a certified jump scare. I was so embarrassed explaining my accident over and over to people, thinking I was beaten nearly to death. Story 38. When I was really young, my mom was looking after my cousin and me at his place while my aunt and uncle were out somewhere. My mom was making supper, and it was almost ready. She told me to go get my cousin so we could get ready to eat. I went to the living room and told him dinner was almost ready. I rolled my ankle, causing me to lose balance and fall backward, where the back of my head hit the corner of the wall. The next thing I knew, I was crying and screaming in pain, and my mom came running to find me with a huge gash in the back of my head bleeding profusely. I probably should have gotten stitches that night, but it was storming really badly, and my aunt and uncle lived way out in the country, so it was going to be a hassle to get me to the hospital. My mom just ended up holding a towel to the back of my head to stop the bleeding and force-fed me macaroni and hot dogs between sobs. Story 39. Carrying my weeks-old daughter downstairs, I slipped, fell, and slid all the way down, carefully cradling my daughter like a football to protect her. She came out of it without a scratch. I had purple bruises the entire length of my butt and legs, but it was worth it to keep her safe. Story 40. I was early for work one morning, and the guys that were there wouldn't open the door to let me in. So I scaled the wall of the 2-story high brick building we worked in, only to discover the top brick was just sitting there, not connected. I fell and broke both my ankles and had to be rescued by the guys that wouldn't let me in.